Sometimes you just need to kind of like check in mentally with like, hey man, you might not make it to the end of college. Just enjoy that you're in college right now or whatever. It's
That's
just
morbid, though. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Pickles and Vodka, the unfiltered mental health podcast where we talk about the things no one wants to talk about in real life. Today is a prime example of that. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you we're talking about suicide, among other things. My guest today is a very colorful person, to put it lightly. And Marconi, I know you're listening to this, and I mean that as a compliment. We do talk about suicide a lot. We don't mention like methods or anything like that, but we do talk about it. And I don't want anyone listening to think that I take suicide lightly or that I'm normalizing it or romanticizing it. I don't think that's what we're doing here. But with that said, we do talk about it in kind of a casual way because we're both familiar with the feelings. And so I want to issue a content warning for that. If you are triggered by descriptions of suicide or just talk of suicide, maybe skip this one. We also talk about drugs at great length. Again, nothing graphic, but if you don't like to hear about drugs, then yeah, maybe skip this one. I feel like I talk about drugs every episode, though, because it's not like I'm a drug addict or anything. I guess before I jump into that, I'll talk about my week a little bit. It's been really hard, to be completely honest. I know I've said that for the last few episodes. It's crazy that means it's for a month I've been feeling like this, which is the same amount of time I was in residential treatment for, and I felt so good about life, and makes me kind of sad that I've now been quote unquote relapsing for that long, which I kind of think of it as a relapse because it's happening more often. It's not just a one-off at this point. But I was talking to my friend Andrew from treatment, who's going to be on this podcast, by the way. But I was telling him what I was going through, how I'd been purging more, how I'd been counting calories and over-exercising, but also how proud I was of myself for like talking to people about it when it happened, making myself go to support groups, that kind of thing. And he was like, it sounds to me like you are still in recovery. I guess my black and white brain is like, you're either relapsing or you're in recovery. No, I'm relapsing and I'm in recovery. And that's kind of a crazy concept to me. And also to anyone familiar with the recovery model as it is, you think, okay, like I'm recovering, so I'm not allowed to mess up at all. And then you mess up, and then, oh, shocker, I'm relapsing. And the word relapse is so charged also. I hate it. It sounds very negative to me. And so I guess I do sound like kind of a broken record at this point because I've been talking about my relapse for the last few episodes. But I think for me, talking about it helps. It makes it feel less scary and less like something that I won't be able to bounce back from, but more like something that just happens and I'll get through it. So I'm trying to be more positive, but it's been a hard week. Without going into details, I had a few interrelational setbacks this week. Someone that I was getting super close to kind of revealed themselves to be not in the same mental space that I was at concerning our relationship. And so I've just been kind of processing that, as well as, you know, all the shit I'm already going through with my bulimia and my relapse and everything. But it's been okay. I'm alive. I wake up every day determined to have a fresh start. And honestly, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, I was talking to my friend Lauren from a few episodes back, and I was walking around last night FaceTiming her, and she, if you didn't hear the episode, the most popular girl in the psych ward, I would highly recommend it because she is in her 40s and she has been dealing with eating disorders almost her whole life and been in treatment multiple times. And so because I respect her experience, and she does have more experience than I do, I wanted to ask her, like, hey, do you feel like this is chronic? At what point in recovery do you just throw in the towel and realize this is probably going to be something you struggle with the rest of your life? And basically, the conclusion we kind of came to was that, you know, maybe it is a chronic condition. Only 30% or even less of people with eating disorders recover. Whatever that means, right? Like, what's the measure of recovery? Is it never having any behaviors ever again? Or is it just being able to like manage your behaviors and just trying to be a little bit better every day? And also like respecting your eating disorder, because it is such a powerful force in your life. And I feel like if you don't respect it, it can really swallow you whole sometimes. And so that's kind of where I'm at, and what we talked about last night was just, if this is a chronic condition, what does recovery look like? What does a recovery lifestyle look like? And I think that's what I'm kind of figuring out this week. I do have my first therapy appointment in 3 days. I'm so excited because it's been over a month since I was in therapy, and it's, like I said, it's been hard. But I'll let you guys know how that goes. And what else was I going to talk about? I'm going to Portland this upcoming weekend to see my best friend Bianca, who moved from Boston. I don't know if I've mentioned her before on the podcast, but we met in 2014 in Austin when she took out an ad for one of the rooms in her house. And we met that way, and we've been best friends ever since. But yeah, for the majority of the last few years, we've been disconnected on the opposite sides of the country. So she and her boyfriend just moved to Portland for the summer, and I'm so excited to finally see her face and hug her. And yeah, also I'm excited to see Portland because I've never been. So if you guys have any hot recs, just DM them to me before I go. But yeah, that's about it for me. I feel like I'm rambling at this point, and I just had like half an energy drink, and I need to get out of my apartment or I'm going to go insane. So with that said, here is my interview with Marconi of suicidelogs. I hope y'all have a good week and enjoy.
Let me just turn this up and turn my volume. Oh, I think I got it.
Hell yeah.
Oh, shit. Yeah, now you're hella loud.
Nice.
How do I sound now? Do I sound better? Is there less?
Yeah, you sound way better.
Okay.
We're just a couple of professionals here.
Right. Oh, so we're recording now, huh?
Oh, yeah. I mean... Yeah, I've been recording. I've been recording all along.
Well, so right off the bat. All right.
What I've realized is that, like, after 2 years of doing this, I've forgotten to hit record so many fucking times that's like the first thing I do now.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm ready.
So,
I'm here. What's up?
Okay. Hello. Welcome. Can you start by introducing yourself to the guests?
Sure.
What your name is, like where you live, how old you are, what you do, anything you want to share. Got
it. 1 second. Let me take a woosah. I'm drinking water here. I just need to, that sounded like a lot to answer. So I needed to really make sure I was hydrated to say all of that. So my name is Marconi. I host a podcast. It's called the Suicidelogs. And I'm pretty sure once you hear that name, you're already like, whoa, what's that about?
Well, we're going to talk about the podcast later. Like, okay. Trust me, I have plenty of questions about the podcast. I want to know about you, Marconi, your whole life story.
My whole life story. Dang, that's a lot. I'm 26. I live in California. And I don't know. I mean, I guess the only thing that I really put out there that's special about me, or that I promote, is just my podcast. And I always feel kind of weird even talking about that. But anything more specific about my life? I mean, what do I like to do and shit like that? I don't know.
Well, okay. Have you always lived in California?
Yes, but I've traveled, not like a lot or anything, but I've definitely gotten out of California a couple of times. Not to live, but I've always lived in California.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so I guess I'll ask you to describe the podcast, and then we can go back to talk about your life story. So the Suicidelogs is your podcast.
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been doing that for?
I was just looking at it. I think my first episode was August of last year.
Okay.
But like, see, here's where it's kind of weird. I like to say that's when I started podcasting, But the Suicide Logs, it wasn't originally a podcast. It was like a YouTube vlogs series that I made. And but I didn't really promote it or anything like how I would with my podcast. I would
Hmm.
just like, I would just put it up there for me. And I guess
Was it like
that's,
an audio journal type of thing? Like a video journal?
yeah, pretty much like it.
I mean,
I
I feel so
started
dumb.
it.
That's literally the definition of vlog.
No, no, but yeah, yeah, yeah. So it wasn't titled Suicide Logs. It was titled Suicide Vlogs, and maybe around like episode 40-ish, 47-ish, that's when I made the podcast. So if you like look me up on Apple or Spotify or anything, and you scroll all the way down to the first episode is going to be episode 47. So I've got like I like to kind of think of it as like Easter eggs. I've got like 46 other episodes that are like floating around YouTube that, to be honest, are probably really hard to find, because if you YouTube suicide vlogs, you're gonna get like 10 pages of everyone talking about that Logan Paul guy who do you know who Logan Paul is?
I do not.
Okay, so Logan
I live
Paul.
in a black hole.
Oh no, that's fine. It's, if anything, it's a better thing that you don't know who he is. But Logan Paul is basically like, he's like a really big deal with the kids nowadays, I guess. He's a very
Okay.
popular YouTuber. He also has like a younger brother who was like on Disney Channel. But anyway, so I found out about this guy because he got like a lot of flack and backlash because he went to Japan.
Uh-huh.
I don't remember what it's called, but the Suicide Forest. So the suicide,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So he went there and he like filmed a vlog about it. And also one thing that he was just being really disrespectful to
I
like,
was gonna say, like, isn't that the place where people go to commit suicide or like
yes,
to
ma'am.
kill themselves? I heard apparently like you can't say commit suicide anymore. It's like died by suicide is like the better way to say it.
Oh, is it like
What are your
offensive to say commit
I
suicide?
get I mean, I don't know. I've heard different things.
I think it's just a sensitive topic to talk about,
Well,
anyways.
yeah, and that's why I wanted to ask you about your show. So you started it on YouTube as a video blog,
Mhm.
a vlog, if you will.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you started doing that and why
Right.
you called it
Right.
what you did?
So, like I said earlier, my first podcast episode, like legit audio only, where I would go off for an hour, was sometime last year. But these vlogs that I would make on YouTube, they weren't that long. Like, if anything, they were 20 minutes long. And I started that maybe in 2000, like the end of 2018, something like that. And I don't know, I just had this feeling, and this is like 2018. So, almost 3 years ago, I had this feeling of like, man, life is really good right now. And I just remembered times in my life where I felt hopeless. I felt like, the future wasn't looking good. It wasn't worth waiting or anything, just typical,
Yeah.
not to like kind of brush over it, but just typical feelings of just like no hope or whatever. And yeah, I've definitely had those feelings before in my life too. And I'm not saying that they're completely gone from my life, but
Yeah.
so yeah, I started making, and that's when I, like, on my very first episode, is probably like a 5-7 minute video. Who fucking knows? Like I don't even know how many views it has. It probably like 50 or something. And it's just me explaining like why I'm doing this. And it's like, I'm not saying I'm suicidal or anything, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you never know. I'm only, at the time when I started it, I was 20, 23, 24, and I was just
Wow.
like, I feel like I'm smart enough to know that how I'm feeling right now, it may not last forever. I may really become depressed or something when I'm 4. Who knows where my headset's going to be at 40? I could develop.
Right.
And the other day I was thinking about you.
I can't even think that far ahead.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't even think till next week.
I think the last
Fuck.
time we talked, you said something about me that I'm like always worried about the future or something, like it's some kind of
Oh, future tripping.
yeah, something like that. But I also remember you said something about like mental health. I do remember, like, we were talking about people who commit or die by suicide because
Yeah.
they are under the influence or something like that. And I just remember you were
Mm.
saying like, you know, you didn't say it exactly like this, but you were like, when someone is depressed or something, they damn near are like under the influence, like they're not in their state of mind, like they're not,
Oh, totally.
you know.
100%.
So I don't know, I was just repeating that in my head and kind of thinking about
Mm.
mental health as like, is it like contagious? Is it like just something, you know what I mean? Like there are
Yeah.
some people that probably have like on the outside or whatever, like their lives and how their diet is and everything. It looks like on paper, like this person shouldn't be depressed, and yet they're depressed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different factors, right? There's like genetics, and there's like the environment you grew up in, and there's your habits, and like all
Right.
this other stuff. I don't. It's interesting that you say contagious because, like, obviously we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Like there is a mental health like crisis going on right now too.
Mhm.
You know,
And it probably was
because
going on before COVID too.
oh, totally. Again, I don't have like the statistics in front of me. I'm not a doctor or anything. But yeah, it's getting pretty bad. So with your podcast, Suicide Logs, you said you started it to kind of remind yourself of the good times, like to kind of ground yourself when you were feeling suicidal.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that before too. Like, sorry, hold on. I had a brain fart.
It's all right.
It's still fucking
It's
early.
early. Yeah, I feel like this is the earliest podcast I've ever done. And I
The second that I you booked that, I was like, why did I put that time slot there?
Dude, I was thinking that too. I was like, I hope I'm not annoying with this, but I'm like, she's the one who put that time, so let's do it.
Yeah,
And
it's
then,
my fault.
I mean, I like it though, because if I didn't do this, I'd still be in bed. So it
Oh,
helps me
totally.
get up,
Same.
and that kind of roots to mental health and things. It's just like, you know what, man, sometimes you just gotta get up early and do something and set the day
Oh,
right.
oh, I remember what I was gonna say.
Go
So
for it.
so I feel like when people journal, they always journal when they're feeling upset. You know what I mean? Like when they're
Mm,
feeling like they really need to get their shit out onto paper. But when people are having like a good time, at least I can speak for myself. When I'm happy, I journal less. So I
right.
think it's cool that when you were in a good state of mind, you made yourself those videos to kind of be like, "Hey, depressed me. This is where the baseline is. Like this is what's possible. You're going to be okay."
Yeah.
Do you think that's like an
That's
accurate?
That's definitely what a lot of my episodes are about. Like even if I do an episode and I'm in a good mood and something, it's just kind of, I don't know really how to feel about it, but I'll always
So
kind of
why is it called the suicide logs?
if you listen to my podcast, I guess it's just kind of like a lot of rants, maybe not so much anymore, but that seemed to be the basis of it, of just me pondering things and just kind of like complaining about things. And I do remember it just like it's like a guy who's like logging in his suicide logs, like this is what's making me upset, this is why I want to kill myself, but he never kills himself. It's just constant, like all the way until he dies of not killing himself, of just like complaining and stuff like that. It's like a piece of history in a sense, but for me, and like I guess it's just kind of like I want to put it out there to the public and things like that, just in case anything were to it's like I feel more comfortable putting it out there just in case something were to happen to me or whatever, that people have access to it and things like that. And it's like it's what I want. And if I have like a personal journal or something and I were to die, this is just me. Like if I were to
Yeah.
die or something and I had all these like private memos in a flash drive or just on my phone, I don't know, like a part of me would want that release. Like I would hate to die and have something that I think is funny or an idea or whatever, and it didn't get out there. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's why podcasts are so great. It's like a piece of history, you know? You're able to
mhm.
listen to yourself back at this point in time and like be like, "Oh, wow, I was doing that at that time. I was feeling this at that time." It's really something. I was just thinking about that the other day, actually.
The last week, I've been thinking about that too. Like, I don't know. I used to really value this whole podcast thing and stuff like, oh, this is a piece of history and stuff like that. But I don't know what it is. I think I was like watching some kind of like documentary on like the pyramids and stuff.
Hmm.
And this might sound a little crazy. I think I was talking about aliens before.
Oh my God, let's stay off.
Yeah. I'm gonna stay off it real quick, but like it'll make sense. So like it's just a theory. Like, you know how maybe in recorded history right now we are like the most advanced with technology, right? Like pretty obvious with the internet and things like that. What if just maybe like thousands of years ago, a million BC or whatever, or like when the fucking pyramid, like not everyone's 100% sure on how they made the pyramids, right? So it's like, what if technology was even like better than it was? It's just that something catastrophic happened, like I don't know, when the meteors destroyed the dinosaurs and shit, and we had to start over. So what if there was a bunch of stuff like kind of like the internet, but like pre-internet, and it got lost, you know?
Well, have you seen Planet of the Apes?
I have. I've seen.
It's kind of like that,
the new
you know?
ones. Yeah.
They dig up all these relics of the ancient world, and it turns out it was their world before.
From what I remember, like they were in New York, and the Statue of Liberty was like on the ground and just covered in sand, right? That's what I'm talking about. So like me as a person and my journey, I don't know if it sounds like selfish or anything, and we could get into that, but it's like I want to do something that like really leaves my mark, you know, like that, like with everything that I was just talking about with, I want that out there and stuff. If I were to die and something crazy were to happen, like the internet just runs out of space or something and people can't access YouTube with the snap of their finger anymore, and I'd be like, my memories are all lost, and everything that I've done and filmed and stuff is just like poof, because something happened and knocked over satellites and shit like that, and we got to restart the internet. I don't know.
I feel like if we lose the internet, the podcast will be like the least of our worries. You know what I mean?
I guess so, but no, but that's the thing, dude. If that were to happen and I were to live through it, how would I want to record that going on? And it's just,
can you imagine like at the end of the world, someone sitting in a pile of rubble and they're like
podcast. Yeah, or they're like in an underground.
They're like they're having an ad sponsor.
Yeah, it's like we're sponsored by nothing. Everyone ran out of
Everyone is dead.
Dude, that's actually, now that I think about it, that is like how I would somewhat want my life to end in a way. Like I would want to generate enough money for like, and again, I feel like this sounds selfish saying it out loud, but
oh boy,
generate a lot of money to where I could build some kind of like underground bunker and live like Batman or something and still do my podcast. And it just starts out silly and everyone's like, this fucking rich kid or whatever is just complaining underground, and then one day the world is just gonna like go to shit and I'm gonna have 0 viewers. Have you seen I Am Legend?
I've seen I Am Legend.
Yeah, you know how in I Am Legend, like in the beginning of it, he's just like living as if there's nothing wrong. He's got all these mannequins set up and shit. Dude, yeah. I would do that with my podcast. I'd make fake Instagram accounts and message me like, today we have a question from
Today we have a question from Ross. How you doing, Ross? Oh, yeah? You're doing great? Me too. Like it's a beautiful day in the post-apocalyptic America.
Like it's fucking Dora the Explorer. What was your favorite part of the podcast? Mine too.
Oh my God. Okay, I feel like we are
I'm sorry.
Sliding off track here. It's okay. I am like, whew. So, okay, taking it back a step to like mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So when you decided to call your show the Suicide Logs, were you expecting to die by suicide yourself? Like, and that's a hard question to answer.
Okay, here's one thing about like my show that I do a bad job at, but every single episode, like one of my rules is, and I don't even think I asked you if you were on my show, which is how bad I am at like controlling my show. I guess the main thing is just every episode is to check in with myself. And I did it a lot at the beginning. Like I would start the episode with just like, hey, didn't think about killing myself today. Or, hey, maybe I did think about killing myself today. At the smallest like level. When I say that, I mean it like, I guess maybe back then I had more of a problem if something just like, or maybe I joke around by it and be like, oh, I could just kill myself and I don't have to wash my car. Just shit like that. And then I realized maybe that's not good. So lately,
Yeah, I feel like people shouldn't joke about suicide.
yeah. And so um yeah, I would do that a lot every single episode, like just check in with myself as like if I thought of it or not. And sometimes I'll go whole episodes without even saying like I thought of killing myself or didn't think about killing myself today. And I feel like you should just take that as like, oh, he's doing well. And if you're listening and you're into the show, I did my job in a sense to like distract you for an hour. Cause like
Hmm.
some you can only talk so much about mental health. It's just like
Yeah.
sometimes it's like maybe you're just like overthinking it or so. I think that's just like how I am.
So you're using the suicide logs to like maybe keep people distracted, keep them with one foot in the world, so to speak,
Yeah,
if they're feeling
like
suicidal.
I think I saw it in a movie like recently, a couple of days ago. Someone said something about like comedy is like the biggest, I don't know, medicine for suffering or something like that. And
Oh yeah, I mean, most comedians are fucking depressed people, you
yeah, and
know?
I'm young. I think I said I'm 26. I just feel like I'm also still kind of exploring myself. And these podcasts are a lot of like self-talk therapy sessions and things like that. And like I said, I think about changing the name because I feel
Hmm.
guilty. Like, man, I'm not even really talking about suicide that much. But I had a
I
buddy.
gotta, I gotta say, I was kind of confused when I found your show because I was like, wait, why is this called the Suicide Logs?
Yeah. And so like I mean, I'm hoping it makes a lot more sense now that I've explained the origins of it and everything.
Yeah.
And I guess like I just got to pay who said it to me? I don't know who said it to me, but they were like you should keep it that name cuz it's paying like homage to your old self and it's like you never know like one day you could just be talking to somebody having a good old time and that name is just always going to be there. And like I think of the show and everything, like if I were to have killed myself, I would have never like started any of this or anything like that. And it's just crazy to think like, there were times in my life where I just really felt like I don't know. I mean, I said it before. I just felt like I didn't want to continue. I felt like nothing was worth it. But here I am.
Yeah.
I'm having a good time and all of this. And sometimes it's just about like I don't know, that cliche, it gets better or whatever, but I can't promise that to everyone. But it's just
Of
like,
course.
it's my experience and it's like I'm sharing my experience and I don't know. It's
Yeah,
different.
at
It's
least
not for
like,
everybody, I guess. Like my
yeah, I
genre.
mean, life might not get better, but at least there's the chance, like
Yeah.
seeing what happens next is kind of one of my big motivators for staying alive sometimes, just
Mhm.
to see what happens next.
Yeah.
Because the world's an interesting place.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I had a question though before I forget.
Mhm.
So you said you were starting the suicide logs as a form of self therapy.
Mhm.
Have you ever had therapy with a therapist, or has anyone in your family?
I don't
Like, how
not
was mental health talked about in your family growing up?
not really at all. Like
Okay.
I I have a really small family. Like I've got family, I've got cousins and uncles and all of that stuff, but they're all on the other side of the planet. Never really grew up with them. I have a sister, but she's a half sister, never really grew up with me. So
Gotcha.
that's another thing. Just like I mean, here I am talking about my life and things. I am also looking for people who can relate because it's just like just because you're depressed or whatever doesn't mean you can relate to another depressed person. Like it comes in all forms. And
Yeah.
I don't know, growing up as like an only child, it's kind of crazy as I got older. I always thought it was normal, but now that I'm like an adult and everything, I don't really know any other only childs. Like I could barely name 3 off the top of my head. Like everyone has a brother, everyone has a sister. Uh, Being family oriented is just like such a big deal and things like that. And I never really realized that. And I'm not saying that I'm not close with my parents. I definitely am, but it's just a little different, especially to like, you would think, oh, because I'm an only child, I'm like spoiled. I get everything because maybe they save more money. But my parents had like average jobs. So a
Mm-hmm.
big part, like the moment I was old enough to stay home alone, like 12, I stayed home alone, like all the way up until high school. My parents wouldn't get back till like nighttime from work. So it's it's weird. Like, I don't know. It's just like I remember being 6 or 7 years old, and my dad worked like night shifts or something. So he would literally just come home, sleep, and then go to work. And I like one of my earliest memories is just crying because I'm so bored. I have no one to play with, and I feel guilty. I don't want to ask my dad to play because he's sleeping. And it's just
Yeah.
like, I don't know if that, like, I thought it was okay at first, but now that I think it's like, how many people like just didn't even have like playmates and stuff like that. And so before I was able to like be home alone, I would get babysat by who is my best friend to this day, by his family. So I'm not that close with his family, but he's like the closest thing to a brother to me. I've known him since I was 2. I think he's been babysitting me since I was 2. And
Yeah.
I'm only 2 days older than him. And I was just talking to him the other day. Um,
Do you guys talk about like mental health stuff?
I've had him on my show once, and that was probably like the most we ever talk about it. I feel like I am a product of like the stereotypical how you raise a boy kind of thing. Like every time I would
Mm.
cry, my dad would just yell at me like, and you know, I love my dad and everything. Don't want to
Yeah.
talk down on him, but like he would always just be like, you only cry when somebody dies. You only cry like if like he wouldn't take me to the hospital if I was ever in pain because he would just be like, or like, no, this one's actually rational. Like if I would like sprain my wrist or something like that, my dad would just be like, nah, nothing's broken. If it was broken, you'd be crying. But yeah, I like, and it still kind of affects.
Wait, so when you're crying, he's like, don't cry. And then when you don't cry, he's like, it's
Yeah,
not bad enough not to be
yeah.
crying.
I
Like,
don't
what?
know. I don't know, dude. It just,
How did that make you feel? That sounds kind of like
well,
shitty.
it made me feel like, I guess, just like ashamed of myself. And I kind of, this is why my podcast is so important to me, because I feel like I figure these things out by just saying it out loud. I was really quiet as a kid and things like that.
Hmm.
I never really learned how to communicate my emotions or just communicate in general. And one thing that was kind of like, I don't know, maybe a big deal growing up that I don't really realize until now is like my parents didn't even really speak English. Like, I mean, they spoke
Hmm.
English well,
Where are
but
they from?
the Philippines. So
Okay.
they spoke.
Oh, my sister-in-law is Filipino.
Oh, great, great.
Yeah. We
So,
actually did an episode together last year.
so are you married, or is a brother married? Yeah, a
My
brother.
brother's married. Yeah, my
Got it.
brother's married to
I
her.
think I remember you have like 6 siblings, 7 siblings, or you were
Wow,
7.
amazing memory.
Yeah, like
Yes,
an
I have six
elephant.
siblings.
Uh,
Also, I realized that like I asked if you've ever seen a therapist, and then I like interrupted my
oh
own
yeah.
question, and you still haven't
I've never,
answered.
yeah, I'm sorry. I've never seen a therapist. And like, I'm
Okay.
going through this, like, oh, I want to do it. I think you were encouraging me. By the way, I do want to give you some good news though. From the
Oh
last
yeah.
time we talked, I think I was saying something like I was afraid to give like blood or whatever.
Uh huh.
I got my blood tested like a couple of days after that episode, and I got my results in, and I'm the fucking healthiest person on the planet. There's like there's nothing wrong with
Must
me,
be
dude.
nice.
It's so it, but when I hear
Did you just
hear
come
that,
on this podcast to like wave around your bill of clean health? You're like, I'm the
but
healthiest
see,
person
but
on
that's the
earth.
thing, you could be healthy on paper, on blood and everything, but
Mm.
that doesn't mean like they did a mental scan on me.
Do you feel like you do have mental issues that you hide from people?
I don't know. I feel like I am just always in constant search to better myself. And maybe it's like, maybe that's a problem. Maybe the problem is that I'm like an overachiever with my mental health. Um,
Well, okay, I feel like everyone should always be trying to be a better person, you know?
yeah.
It's when you put too high expectations on yourself when it becomes
I'm just
problematic.
I'm just always trying to improve. And I feel like with every podcast that I do, I feel like it's like you're watching me grow. Like I'm just learning things, and I'm learning things about myself. And I guess I just never really sat down with myself and really talked about like, who am I? And sometimes I could just be
Yeah.
like the root of whatever's mentally draining you or whatever. And it's just like that question is not easy to answer. It's like sometimes
Hmm.
people they're feeling so down. I was just talking to a guy yesterday, been talking to him for years, and he's just, I don't want to talk bad about him, but it's just very frustrating for me and all of the people that are like in his life. And he's like constantly talking about wanting to kill himself and how there's no hope. And it's just like, I get it. I don't want to sound like that broken record that's like, well, why don't you work out? Why don't you keep yourself busy? It's like, you don't think those people have tried?
It's really hard to know what to say to someone
Yeah.
who is going through that, because you don't want to be a broken record. You don't want to be like, see a therapist, go take a breath of fresh air,
It's,
like go hug a baby.
yeah. And it's like,
I don't know why I said that. That's fucking
go hug
creepy.
a
I don't even like
one
babies.
one thing about me too is like I felt like I had a fucking phobia of babies. Like I probably only held like 2-3 babies in my life. I just feel so much anxiety of like, oh, I don't want to drop it. Oh, what if it stops breathing? Then I'm responsible.
So mental health therapy, like your podcast as a form of therapy for yourself. By the way, have you ever had like anybody like freak out about the name of your show, or like people who are like questioning you about it?
Not as much as I am right now.
I swear to God, like I can't ask questions this morning.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine.
But you know what I mean?
I know
like,
what you mean.
Have you ever experienced like backlash for the name of your show?
Here's my response. Like I think about that, but it's like, dude, there's a movie called Suicide Squad, and it's like I feel like the name that I'm in is just like it's such a hot topic name of like literally the Hot Topic Mall or Spencer's gift wrap kind of name. It's just like I've had some other people, and it's just super funny, and I'd like make fun of them in a sense because they're from like the Netherlands and they've got this accent, and I don't know why my podcast like is recommended to these people, but they're just all like, oh yes, I thought it was very cringe lord edgy because of the name or something. They're trying to like edgy, cool. I thought it was like edgy or trying to be cringy, but then I listened to it and it's actually pretty funny. And it's just like sometimes the name draws like people. You know what's really weird though? Like sometimes I'll get people who reach out to me and they'll be like, hey, your podcast helped me out. I like what you had to say and things like that. And that's it. That's all they would say. And I'd like try to message them back and they don't message me back. I don't even get a read. And it's weird. And I just sometimes kind of trip myself out like, oh my God. Like, and if I do this for like, the goal is to kind of do it for the rest of my life. Cause it would be like the last episode is like, I don't know, either I killed myself or I died. And it's just, I don't know, doing it so much really just puts like the idea of suicide for me like completely off the table. Like I can't do it, and as corny as it sounds, it's like I do it for the podcast. I do it for myself. It's just like, I don't want to let people down. I don't want to, it's always a constant reminder of just like my family and things like that. But anyway, I feel like I'm veering off. So yeah, these people, they just won't say anything. And I'll kind of be like, oh man, like what if somebody just reaches out to me and that's like the last thing they fucking say and they kill themselves? That's a lot to kind of like carry on my
Well, you can't think like that. I mean, trust me, I have gone down that rabbit hole many times, and it's just sometimes you never get answers, and that's the hardest answer of all,
Right.
Because like I've had guests on the podcast before who talked about suicide, and then months or years down the road, I no longer speak to them. I don't know how they're doing, and it's hard. I could get myself into a really bad anxious spiral if I like thought about it for too much, but you just can't think about it too much.
You got to put yourself first. You can't.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
That's like
how do you put yourself first?
It comes from being an only child. I'm used to it. No, I'm joking. I have learned
again,
that.
Must be nice.
I could tell how it, because if I got to be really honest I'm super blunt with my friends and stuff. Like they have siblings, and some of my friends fucking hate their siblings, and they're just like so jealous of me. And a part of me is just like, I think that's just your fault that you can't get along with your siblings, because I've got friends that have like, I don't know, sometimes I think it's like a communication thing, but there's other factors in it too. But
you can't control who your siblings are, just like you can't control being born.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's an interesting topic. Being born without Fuck. Entering the world without getting asked first.
Right.
Well, so the reason I asked that, hear me out, is because of like we were talking about suicide, and like I feel like that is a reason some people do end up killing themselves, because they didn't ask to be here and life is just too hard for them. Like, what do you think about that?
Uh, I agree. Like I let them see one thing too that I don't want my show to really be about, which I thought it was, but I started thinking about it a little bit harder. It's not like I want to end suicide, you know, and I mean that in a good way of like,
You mean like no one's killing themselves anymore?
yeah, like let's just be real. It's
Yeah.
not possible. Someone like there's
Yeah.
probably been like 10 people who've killed themselves like throughout this whole show. You know, I'm not Superman. I'm not gonna stop it. At the same time, some people don't want it to suck, you know? Some people like one thing that I've kind of like with my journey with this whole thing, one thing that I was like quick to kind of realize and learn is like suicide is like a part of people's culture and religions and stuff like that. You know, like it's more
In some
normalized,
cases, yeah.
like it's more normalized in places like Japan. I don't know. So some people don't see suicide as like such a horrible and bad thing, like maybe we do kind of in America in a sense. So sometimes a part of me is just to kind of be like, not advocating for suicide also, but it's just also like just understanding other people's takes on it.
Well, and ultimately, everyone has control of their own lives and their own decisions. But it's going back to what we were saying when I was on your show. It's like when you're suicidal, you're not in your right state of mind, usually.
Right.
I mean, and I guess that's different when it has to do with like religion or whatever. But still, I wouldn't argue that it's good.
Have you seen the movie Midsummer?
Yeah.
Or, do you remember
Midsummer?
That? Like, yeah, I'm sorry. I saw it once, and then that shit.
I also saw it once, and I barely remember because I kind of like purged it from my brain.
Was it was that because it was so bad? Like,
no, it was a good. I remember.
No, I mean
it was
bad
a good
isn't
movie.
like scary or something. What do you mean by purged it from your brain?
Oh, I guess there was a lot of weird like sex stuff that I remember being like, "What the fuck is this?" and not wanting to watch it. And
see, I've got memory like an elephant. How do you forget things? How do like
drugs?
Yeah, I've heard you say
years of drug abuse. My memory is shit.
Let's talk about drugs.
All right. Well, okay. Talking about drugs. How have drugs affected you in your life, and like, do they have anything to do with the way you approach suicide or mental health?
I could talk about it a lot, but I don't know if you've noticed. I didn't really want to. I try to be really like, not secretive, but I do like an experiment with weed. So like when you were on my show, I was high as fuck, and like today I'm sober. And I just like I could feel the difference. Are like sober right now? Or are you smoking right now? I'm sober. Do you normally smoke on your show, or do you always?
No. Well, so in the past, when I started this show, I was an alcoholic and I would record drunk a lot of times. And I can totally tell when I listen back to those. I'm like, wow, that was really seriously inhibiting your ability to produce a show.
When you're drunk, do you like I'm not that much of a drinker, so like I don't know if this is a dumb question, but like would you get like fucking wasted on the podcast and just kind of like
I mean,
or like
it was mostly just like to feel normal. Like I couldn't feel normal unless I drank because and I guess it started out with depression and stuff, but that's the story. That's my story. We're not talking about me right now.
I'm sorry. Well, one thing about me that I would like to get your input on is like,
yeah,
I've never gotten blacked out drunk before, and that
shit is terrifying.
It is terrifying, and I think that's why it's never happened. I don't know. I think I'm not a drinker because I'm a horrible drinker. Like I don't know how to like pace myself and shit like that. So I'm like, I don't want to learn how to pace myself because I might like it and just start fucking drinking all the time.
Yeah, you're better off without it.
And I don't know if like talking about drinking is like appropriate or setting you off, because I do know, I remember like an elephant that you're an alcoholic. But I'm sorry, that's about you. But it's just like, some people don't like
I don't mind talking about myself, but like I want to learn about you and like what your story is. And I forget what I asked you. Oh yeah, drugs and like mental health. And you were talking to me about smoking weed and how you do it on the podcast.
I like smoking weed. I feel like it has actually caused a lot of success in my life. I feel like when I'm sober, and I feel like I've done enough like studying on myself to really be confident in this answer of I think I'm just naturally a really like cranky person. Like, you know how like when you get off weed and you haven't smoked in like a week or two, you'll probably be like on the fucking like edge or something, or you got a short fuse. I feel like I'm like that all the time. um,
Well, maybe you have an anxiety disorder.
hmm,
Did you ever
maybe
think about that? I mean,
I
not that you should
yeah.
diagnose yourself. Obviously,
I just
no.
I always feel like everyone gets anxiety to some certain extent, and it's about how they deal with it, and
Well,
specifically,
everyone experiences anxiety, but I guess not everyone has an anxiety disorder.
yeah,
And if you're doing drugs like all day long to feel normal, then like to feel like
yeah.
you're not on
I
edge all
don't.
the time.
I guess it's just one of those things. Like I saw a cool quote. I don't know who it was, but like they were trying to compare like weed to like wine. You know, nobody really yells at somebody for having a glass of wine and things like that, but
Yeah.
weed still kind of has that stigma of just like drugs, you know. But I'm not getting fucking blasted all the time. It's just like time management. Like when the time is right, I like to feel like I deserved weed. You know what I mean? It's like if
Mhm.
I did a lot of productive shit um and kept it good and like the day's over or whatever and I had some time to kick back, I enjoy smoking a little bit, but that's really it. Like I've experimented with like other shit. I've never done mushrooms, and me and my girl have
Me
been
neither.
like, really,
Mm-mm.
what's the strongest thing that you've done?
What I don't know what do you mean like
Yeah, like
by strong?
okay,
Like
so like
I feel also I
mhm,
feel like people categorize drugs
on
as
like
like
levels and shit.
hard drugs or like gateway drugs, but like
Mhm.
well, anything can be harmful to anybody.
Right,
You
right.
know what I mean? That's why I don't like talking about it in terms like that, I guess.
I guess like something that I imagine was like maybe you've done something, maybe you've done like coke or whatever, but that doesn't compare to a certain time where you just got like super drunk. But on paper, cocaine looks worse than drinking. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's what's wrong with
Yeah.
our society is that you can have a glass of wine and like be like socially acceptable, but if you smoke a joint, it's like, oh my God, you're a drug
I
addict.
think we're getting past it though. I think we
I hope
definitely
so.
are. But
Because I think does weed does have amazing effects for people who suffer from depression and anxiety, and obviously weed can be problematic too.
mhm.
But I have seen it benefit a lot of people in my life, and it's benefited me too. Like, can you relate to
Yeah,
that?
I think it benefits me. The only thing it doesn't benefit is probably my bank account. But like
Yeah.
I think it's worth it. I think it's like a legitimate like investment. And saying that out loud just sounds kind of silly to me. It just sounds kind of like, oh, it's my medicine or whatever. But really, like, I don't really get
It
bummed.
can be.
Like, I just bought like an ounce yesterday for 100, and I just like look at that. I don't really bat an eye at that 100. I just kind of was like,
Yeah.
what else can I get for? I know I could buy food and groceries. Obviously, that shit's important. But when you cover everything, when you cover your bases and shit like that, and you can afford like if you can afford weed, it's
Yeah.
it at least for me. I'm not saying it's for everybody. For me, I feel like it's worth it, and it's just I get I get a better perception of life. And when I first started smoking, I guess that's what I wanted to say. Like I started smoking when I was maybe like 18, not like crazy. It always started
Hmm.
just like, oh, I was at a party, let's try it. I remember my first time smoking was my first time drinking also.
Mm.
Um, and I took the smoking route. But then I stopped, and there was like maybe like 2 years where I drank, but only drank at like parties and stuff, so barely anything. And I put like weed down. For some reason, I just had this like stigma in my head of like, this isn't good for you. And then just like out of nowhere, right before I started the suicide vlogs, I started smoking. And then I don't know, when I started smoking, my girl can vouch for it too. Like I don't do it so much anymore, but for a good couple of years, it seemed like every time I smoked, I would talk about death. And she was like, "You're talking about death again. You're getting fucking dark." And I'm just like, "I don't know. It's just what's going on in my head." And but I don't know. I've when I compare the 2 years of me smoking to the 2 years of me not smoking, I feel like I was way more productive in the 2 years of me smoking. Like I did a lot of things that I wanted to do. I felt motivated. Um,
It sounds to me like listening to you talk about your vlog and, you know, making these recordings for yourself, you know, using weed to help with your anxiety or whatever. It sounds like you've always been good at like using what resources you have to help yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it is really fucking hard to get help for mental health stuff, you know?
Mhm.
And I hate it when people are just like, go see a therapist. Because, like,
Yeah.
no, not everyone can see a
Do I have
therapist. Like,
therapist
what
money?
else is in your toolbox
Right.
that can help you? And it's very subjective. So, like, how would you say your podcast, Suicide Logs, has like changed your perception of things?
Oh man. Yeah, I'm definitely out of my bubble way more. And I thought I was an open-minded person before I started the show. But I think I'm still working on that. And I think I'm still being way more open-minded. And I guess it's like I try to learn something every day on the podcast and things like that. So
Yeah, I mean, it's like being a little bit better every day, like you were saying at the beginning of this.
yeah. And it feels good to just like help people. And I hate saying that. Like it just sounds so like, oh, look at me, I'm helping people and things like that. But you really do get like some kind of satisfaction when somebody hits you up. And it just, I mean, I'm sure you can relate with your show and everything. It just feels so like, what? You listen to me? You know, it's just,
Someone besides my mom listens to this?
yeah, it's just that's it keeps me going, but I try not to have it be that. Like I try to like I wanted to keep it as authentic as possible and not have any like outside influencers or anything like that. Like the only time where I'll feel like I'm not being authentic is if I get ads and I'm just like reading something off. But I really want it to be as like not as structured of a show. It's just an
Yeah.
hour of me off the rip, like how I'm feeling, and what you get is what you get. Sometimes the episode's gonna suck. Sometimes I'm on a roll. I do want to say, because we were talking about drugs, there's a couple of episodes like in the beginning where I'm just on like hard edibles we made, and I don't remember much of the episodes, but I just remember laughing so much.
Is there anything you found out about yourself that's like surprising because of the podcast?
I feel like there's a lot that I've realized about myself that I just don't. It's crazy. It's not, it hasn't been that long, but I still feel like a different person. But it's like the same, but just, I like to think of it as improved. I feel like I don't complain as much. I feel like I am more, what's the word I am looking for? I feel like before I started the podcast, I was very narcissistic in a sense and feeling like the world owed me something. And I guess one thing that I've realized with the show is still like maybe I am a narcissist or something. I don't know. I try, but I don't think that as much as I did before. It when I first started, I was just like, you know, really excited about the show and my mind was just always racing and things like that. But now that some time has passed, I feel like I was like, oh shit, I could be myself. Like I can handle this. This is not really getting to me, you know?
Yeah. It's just about getting through life. And if your podcast, like, I think it's great that you do the podcast, not just for other people, but for yourself too,
Mhm.
just as a way of, kind of like we were saying earlier, like to document your life for the future, but also just to process things.
I feel like it's a simple thing that I do. I just want to remind people to like put themselves first, remind people to do what they want, but at the same time, we cover other things about that. It's not just like we get up on here and I feel like there's a bunch of podcasts like you deserve it, you do this, but we kind of I kind of question it a little bit more. Um,
You're not a self-help podcast.
yeah, I'm not just like, all right, is everyone feeling okay kind of thing. It's like if I'm feeling good, I want to make people feel good too. If I'm not feeling good, I want to communicate why I'm not feeling good and see if, you know, if people can relate or something. And every time I do an episode where I'm like really upset, I always kind of look back on it like, oh yeah, you were being silly. Hopefully at least people found it funny.
Or at least they realizing they're not the only ones who have those kind of thoughts, you know?
Right.
Sometimes it's important to be upset and to let out emotions. And what better way than a podcast?
Right. Maybe I don't talk too much about my problems and stuff in my personal life and things like that, but maybe I don't know, it's just weird, like you ever think about like what if we just got like all the fucking sad people and stuff, we just put them in a room or something. You probably have like the whole world in one room. I don't know. Everyone's got some kind of sadness. And it's so real quick. One thing that I've always thought when I was young is I want to be old. I want to live to 100. And I'd realized, what's the point of living 100 years if it's going to be 100 years of like suffering, So now the goal is I want to live a long, happy life. It's like if I died at 30, but I knew for a fact that I'd be happier than living to like 100 being miserable, shit, I'll be fine with that. But the goal is, the future is unknown and all that. So I just, with what you were saying with resources and things like that, with what's given to me in my life, I want to make the best out of it. And that's
and we don't know when we're going to die. No one knows how long they have.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that idea of just living every day. Fuck,
it's
that
your
sounds
last.
so fucking cheesy.
It's
but you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like sometimes you just need to kind of like check in mentally with like, hey man, you might not make it to the end of college. Just enjoy that you're in college right now or whatever.
That's morbid though. Oh man.
I don't know.
Where can people find your podcast? Give me all the plugs for people.
All right. So it's just Suicide Logs. I wanted to put a "the" in it because I say the Suicide Logs sometimes. I heard you say it, but it's just Suicide Logs. SUICIDELOGS, like LO, like logs, like I'm shitting logs. And you can find it on Spotify, Apple. I'm pretty sure that's where most people find podcasts. I'm also on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there. That's like where, like, I do have an email, but I would prefer people just send me like a DM on Suicide Logs. No space or anything, just one word for my Instagram. By the way, I'm having your boy from Decent Takes on my show tomorrow.
Hell yeah.
We're going to talk about real estate. So
Javon's amazing.
I've got questions. I'm trying to get rich.
He has a lot of crazy stories.
Oh yeah. I was
ask him about Burger King.
Yeah, I do remember that. You know what's crazy? I'm a fan of Burger King. I like Burger King.
You guys can like have a debate then.
Oh man, if he's a McDonald's guy, it's gonna be fun. But thank you for letting me on your show. Thank you. I think this is also my first time being on someone else's show, like for realsies.
Yeah, I feel honored.
Thank you. Me too.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
I hope your day is good and that you take a lot of woosahs.
Oh yeah.
You never explained what woosahs are, but I think we should just leave it as a mystery and have people go check out your show to find out what they are.
Check out on my show. We woosah it the fuck up. Sometimes we go the whole episode without a woosah. It's rare. Rare. But all right. Thank you.
All right. Take care of yourself.
You too. You have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of Pickles and Vodka. If you could relate to anything we talked about, you can follow the podcast at Pickles and Vodka Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook by typing in Pickles and Vodka Podcast. You can also email me at picklesandvodkapodcast@gmail.com if you have any stories or if you just want to say hi. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Stay safe.